Hello and welcome, fellow coders. Thanks for joining me for the tutorial video about one of the most important data structures in Go. I'm talking about maps. First, let's have a look at what maps are and why they are so powerful. In computer science, one of the fastest ways to store data is in the form of hash tables. Hash tables store key-value pairs in a special kind of way. Before storing the value, hash tables take the key, perform some kind of hash operation that returns the so-called hash value, and then store the hash value together with the actual value. The trick now is that the hash value represents the index of an array at which the value gets stored. This has a few implications though. First, performing the hash operation on the same key always results in the same index. That's why you can never have two or more different values for the same key. One key always represents one value. This directly leads me to the second point. Hash tables are blazingly fast. Inserting values, deleting values, looking up values, all these operations work by performing the hash operation, which returns the exact index at which the value exists. And that is why hash tables are so incredibly useful in terms of storing data in your code. Dude, thanks for this incredibly boring intro. This should be a tutorial about maps, right? Well, where are they? In Go, hash tables are implemented by the map data structure, so when talking about maps, what you're really talking about are hash tables. But enough of the words. Let's see some code. Creating maps in Go basically works the same way as with slices. I have explained the built-in make function in my video about arrays and slices, so if you want to recap the make function, you should definitely go check it out. For now, I will assume that you know how it works. As I said, you can use the make function to create a map. The syntax for defining a map looks as follows. First you need the map keyword followed by square brackets. These will contain the type of your key, for instance string. Right after the square brackets you define the type of the value, which in our case will be string as well. Since maps are dynamically sized, passing in a size to the make function does not have any impact for maps. Let me quickly show you that by printing out the map as well as the length of the map. If you run that, you can see that the map is empty and the length is 0. Now even if I put in 10 as the second argument to the make function, the map is still empty and the length is 0. So in contrast to slices, maps are not getting pre-filled with any kind of default values, just for you to know. Now let's go ahead and store some values into the map. As I explained earlier, maps store key-value pairs, so you always need a specific unique key to store a value. Let's change the name of the map to 5lengths and store the favorite programming languages for me and all of my coworkers. First we have me. My favorite language is of course Golang. In order to put this key value pair into the map, I can use square brackets after the map to put in the key, followed by an equal sign and the value I want to store. Then there is Jane, which I like a lot because her favorite language is Golang too. And then we have John. John and I, well, we sometimes have our differences. John thinks that Java is and will always be the best language in the world. Now that our favorite languages are put into the map, let's go ahead and print them out. You can see that all key value pairs are getting printed out by a colon separating them. We have Jane and me with Golang and John with Java. But did you notice that the order in which they are printed out differs from the order I put them into the map? I put myself in first, followed by Jane and John, but the output has Jane first and then John and me. This is a very important point when it comes to maps. The order is not preserved. Definitely keep this in mind because that is a big restriction in terms of storing data. If you need your data to be in a specific order, you cannot use maps. Another restriction that maps have is that they can only store one value per key. For instance, let's say John has watched all my tutorial videos and is now convinced that Golang is indeed a great language and even has now become his personal favorite. If you run the code, you can see that the output only contains the value Golang for John. First we store Java for John, then Golang. So if you store a value for the same key the second time, the value gets overwritten. But if you need to store multiple values for one key, you can for example use a slice of strings as the value. But for now, you can only have one favorite language. Okay, this is one way of how you can put keys and values into your map. Now let me show you how you can initialize a map as a literal. Let's remove the make function and append two curly brackets at the end, after the type of the value. This is how you would initialize an empty map literal. But of course, you can also put in initial values by first putting in the key, followed by a colon and the value. Each of these key value pairs is separated by a comma. This way of declaring initializing a map is extremely useful if you know at least some of the keys and values before you put in more. This is used all the time when writing tests, or for instance if you have some default values that your map should contain. Now let's go ahead and let me show you how you can retrieve the value for a key. To do that, you can use the square brackets as well and simply put in the key for the value you want to retrieve. See, if I put in Thomas as the key, the console output is golang. But you have to be cautious though. When using strings as key, the spelling is important. By using a lowercase t, the string is a different one, so it's also a different key. And to no surprise, the value is an empty string, showing you that there is no value stored in the map for the key Thomas with a lowercase t. But there is a very cool feature about golang in maps. To show you that, let me quickly rewrite the code a bit and store the value in its own variable. And if you want to check if the map contains a value for a key, you would need to compare the value to the empty string. This actually seems to be no big deal, but what if you change the type of the value, for instance like we discussed earlier from string to a slice of strings? By doing so, you would be forced to change every single check in your entire codebase, which would definitely be a pain in the rear. And there is another issue. What if the default value, the empty string, could actually be a stored value? In that case, how can you know if the empty string is a value stored in the map or not? That is why Golang provides us with a super cool way of checking whether or not a map contains a value for a specific key. When retrieving a value out of the map, we can add a second return value and store it into a variable. The second variable is optional, which you already saw since the compiler did not complain previously. The type of the second return value is boolean, and it represents the presence of a value for the specified key. A best practice and something you see in a lot of other tutorials or books is to name the variable OK. Now you can easily go ahead and check if a value exists by checking if OK is true. And if that's the case, execute whatever code you want to execute. This way, even if the stored value is an empty string, or if you would change the type of the value, you would still be able to check whether or not the value is stored in a map without rewriting any code. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Now the last thing I want to show you is how you can remove values from a map. Obviously, removing values is done by their key, and in Golang there is the built-in delete function for that. If you type in delete, you can see that the first argument is a map and the second is a key. So let's go ahead and remove Thomas from the favorite languages and see what's the console output after running the code. Okay, nice. After deleting the key from the map, you can see that OK returns false and therefore no value is present gets printed to the console. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, no. If you enjoyed this one, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. You can also follow me on my social media to get more stuff from this dude right here. And until next time, keep on coding.